So Jackson, we've been seeing kind of an uptick in brand advertising, even from those advertisers that really paused or went dark for a period. We're also seeing really positive response from consumers or being very receptive to this. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what's going on with spending right now and what's going on with that consumer response and how customers are responding?
Yeah, we're definitely starting to see marketing spend pick back up. I think, if you rewind about a month, maybe 6 weeks, we see a lot of brands either pulled back their marketing significantly or went dark altogether. And I think that was for a few reasons. One, it's a sensitive time both for marketing in terms of like how you communicate with your customers, but also financially for a lot of companies, right? So there was a desire to potentially cut costs quickly and reassess the situation, but also figure out, okay, how are we going to speak to our customers during this completely unprecedented time? So, now I think we're starting to see consumers are starting to spend money again, and brands are following that and continuing to advertise. And what we've seen is that consumers are really receptive to brands advertising. In fact, the studies that we've performed have shown that customers actually expect brands that they are customers of to continue advertising, not to pretend that it's business as usual and that the world is completely unchanged, but they want to hear what their favorite brands' responses are and what they are doing to help them. So I think the general trend, and I think we've all been seeing this, is brands demonstrating to their customers about how can they be helpful. And for some brands, they can, like Budweiser, for example, they can completely change their manufacturing to now produce hand sanitizer, or some companies are producing masks. Not every brand is going to be able to do that, right? But there are other ways, by promoting discounts, big or small, free trials or extended trials, contactless delivery, curbside pickup, all these different things that brands can do. And we're seeing them adapt really quickly in terms of how their services or products can respond, and then pushing that to the forefront of their marketing. Another key thing, and I think brands are really understanding this, is that, and the chart here reflects that, is that brands that continue to advertise or increase their advertising during a time of crisis or an economic recession, they come back a lot faster in terms of their market share during the recovery period. And it can also help mitigate any of the negative effects during the downturn. So I think brands really understand that and are, they see the path forward now in terms of how to communicate with their customers, and that consumers are spending again. So they're getting back into the ad market.
Yeah, and I think that kind of pivots nicely to kind of the search in category trends. So the other interesting thing that we're seeing is upticks in search in specific categories. So obviously everybody knows, right, there was an uptick in PPE and food items, but we're really seeing some positive signs of rebounds in some other categories too. So could you quickly discuss some of those rebounds, and what do you think this means for consumers and where they are in this phase of this quote unquote new normal?
Sure. So, we know as people are continuing to shelter in place, and I think we're all preparing to do that for an extended period of time now, our shopping behaviors are changing. What we need in terms of like products and services is changing. And like, we're monitoring vertical trends, and they are changing week by week. And I think we're starting to see a story of what's happened over the last few months. So we analyzed Amazon search data over the last many months, week over week, to understand what is their demand for up and down as time goes by. And what we saw is, as the shelter in place really began, the demand for household supplies, in March really peaked. And now that once, people have figured out that, okay, our supply chain's okay, we're going to be able to get the essentials that we need, we're starting to see demand for those kind of return to normal now. Whereas when the pandemic really started to spread in March, we saw other categories like clothing and apparel completely drop off demand for those sorts of products. But now that people are anticipating that they are going to be spending less time shopping or going out and spending more time at home, I think they're preparing for what comes next. I think I'm going to have to do my summer clothes shopping online now. So we're starting to see categories like clothing and apparel and some others that we'll get to in just a moment, starting to creep back up in terms of consumer demand.
Yeah, no, I think that it has been super interesting. Even things like, I mean, we were talking offline about like jewelry and home DIY type things. So people are just kind of, they're past the freak out period. And now they're like, okay, this is back to sort of what my life looks like right now. And how do I go back to my normal consumer kind of trends? Um, you know, the other kind of part to this is the paid media trends, right? So it's also, you know, when all of this happened several weeks ago and we all started, you know, marketing metrics and KPIs, they were just crazy, right? Completely out of whack, conversion rates, click-through rates, everything was kind of like nuts. So what are you guys seeing, and what are you seeing specifically in the past week? These normalized at all? And what does this look like across platform? You know, where are there sell opportunities? Where has it rebounded? What does that look like for an e-commerce client, you know, conversion rates, et cetera?
We're not necessarily seeing things normalize yet in terms of there being week over week stability. We're actually still seeing a lot of fluctuations as the weeks go by. But in, you know, typical standard e-commerce channels like search and social, we're seeing actually really favorable metrics for advertisers. So, you know, we're monitoring the trends week over week. We're seeing CPMs decline. And this is just over the past week, you know, the week of 4/13 versus the previous week. But these are actually just continuations of longer scale trends that we've seen. So CPMs are declining, CPCs are declining. Engagement from users is increasing through click-through rate and engagement. It's increasing. So there's a few things that, you know, I see in that. One is that consumers, like we said before, are receptive to advertising. I think especially now as they're reassessing what they're going to need, you know, in their lives and as they're spending more time at home, as well as just, I think the pullback in the market has created a favorable cost structure for advertisers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I did want to talk about is the stimulus check impact. So, you know, I've been seeing really conflicting reports and reading conflicting articles. You know, one will say it has a really positive impact on digital campaigns. Others will say people are really using this to buy necessities like food items. So, you know, what are you seeing happening, and what do you think is happening, if anything, with the stimulus check that a lot of Americans and people are getting right now?
So I think there might be something to that. I think there might be an impact of the stimulus check on shopping immediately, especially on online shopping immediately. We definitely need to continue monitoring this, but I think that ROI metric, the increase of 25% in e-commerce campaigns, is a critical thing to look at, because that coincides directly with when stimulus checks began being deposited into people's accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a few things that are really going into that ROI metric. I think it's one, the stimulus cash might be, you know, provide extra spending power for people who are also discovering, okay, I'm going to be at home for a while longer, or, you know, the needs in my life are different than they were a few months ago. What do I need for that? And they're going out and buying those things. So I think it's the combination of those different factors. But people are still waiting on their stimulus checks to come. So this is a trend we're definitely going to continue to monitor.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see how this kind of continues through next week and the following, to see if it really was a rebound from the check, or if it is something that is a little bit more continuous. Okay, perfect. Well, that's pretty much all we have for today. So thank you everybody for joining our first 10-minute trends webinar. Please make sure to join us next week, Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern. And if there are any questions or something we didn't get to cover, because we do only have 10 minutes, please feel free to email us to marketing@directagents.com, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks.